Greetings, Guardians. My name is Bife here. So, collective obligation. I don't have one of these for the recording, so take this discount collective obligation gameplay, aka not a pulse rifle or an exotic, it's Aisha's Embrace. The new Trial Scout. Look, listen, it's close enough, it's void, it does cool things with explosions. May not get the point across, but either way, it's the closest I could get. And I wasn't going to use Graviton Lance. Sorry. This weapon, as in Collective Obligation, is really powerful and a fascinating one, because it also links in with a detail that I think is really important, one that we need to talk about at length in order to truly understand what we're looking at here. Something which you can read about in its lore. So, this is very much partly a video about how the Witness gifted something incredibly powerful to Rolk and what that means for us, but also it's about a little detail in the lore tab which tells us a lot more about Rolk's actions in the Throne World at large, ever since Savathun shot him off and ever since it was filled with light, and in particular, ghosts. That is where our video is going to lead us today. But first, I have a word from our sponsors over at Manscaped, because they know what's truly important to you. Orbs. No, not these two. Not these two. I'm talking about your other two. You know. The Traveler is looking pretty dusty, and there's very little we can do about that right now, but there is something that we can do about our own orbs. I'm talking about your balls, gents. Yeah, I know, there's like 95% of you on here watching who are gentlemen, so this does apply to you. Hygiene is important, and that's why Manscaped is looking to arm you with some pretty priceless loot in the form of the Performance Package 4.0. It comes with the Lawnmower 4.0, an incredible piece of loot for hygiene down below in the nether regions, and for when you need something that's a little bit less long than your glaive. It also comes with the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver for when you need to freshen up those orbs of power that you've got between your Guardian's thick Titan thigh. You can also get 2 free gifts with the Performance Package, including the Shed Travel Bag and the Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs. Thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring today's video. Get 20% off plus free international shipping plus 2 free gifts with the link below. That's manscaped.com/mynameisbife. So, Collective Obligation and the Mystery of the Ghosts and Rolk. Yes, you heard me right. There is a point at which Rolk was clearly interacting with ghosts, but that's something we're going to touch on in a bit. To focus on our exotic weapon from the raid first, I figured it was important to explain that yet again this is one of those exotics that has mechanics that also reflect its lore, a little bit like Touch of Malice. To that end, I'm going to read the lore that we get from its lore tab as well as its flavor text, talk about it, and then we're going to dive into some of that lore before we dive into another, more interesting rabbit hole. You'll understand why I say it's more interesting than an exotic raid weapon in a bit. Trust me, hold on for that one. It really does blow the socks off of the entire raid, and I can't believe it comes from the ghost of all things. Either way, this is the lore from the Collective Obligation exotic from the Vow of the Disciple raid. What the Witness gave me, I give to you. May it serve you in death or in finality. It cannot be both. Rolk, Disciple of the Witness. Heard while scavenging a pile of dead ghosts within the Throne World. O insatiable you! How many beats on the snare of self-righteousness will it take before you acknowledge all the avenues from which you stall the flow of things as they should be? You do not see the collective obligation before you, the duteous burden that has rested on all sentient beings since time's origination, to ferry existence toward inevitable consequence, the final shape. Why do you unendingly insist on waylaying the machination of every being with a worldview differentiated from your own? You lack respect. You lack direction. You seek only what you are guided to seek, and for what? You remain little more than an unrelenting nuisance. I was like you once. Wayward, driven to misguided perfection by the bubble society painted around me. But when I look back, none but one had the answers. None but one shed all the airs of any pretense of what the universe was supposed to be in the eyes of the infinitesimal individual. My Witness. Through it, I found incentive, clarity, purpose. I sought to shed from myself the layer of barbarism that had pervaded my being for so long. I turned instead to the sophistication of infecting others with self-actualizing corruption. You see, total eradication may be efficient, but the goal is not to be the last one standing. Rather, it is to remove the obstacles that encumber you and those who remain from reaching your destination. Annihilation of your kind was never the goal, but filling you with the right kind of ideological purpose, the kind that serves the finality of shape. Well, that's the point of corrupting a beating heart, is it not? So Rulk was gifted this artifact, this weapon by the Witness, and maybe when we find it, if that is what we find when we find out what's in that massive pile of dead ghosts, he speaks to us, and he gives us an insight into the collective obligation, as he would put it, of all beings to eventually lead the universe towards the final shape. The weapon is something that really speaks to the fact that Rulk and the Witness both fervently believe in this final shape, this result of the sword logic. They believe that the universe inevitably is headed towards the final shape, a universe designed by a pattern of brutality leading to more brutality, a place where social Darwinism reigns and only the strongest are considered worthy of survival. This is what the Witness and Rulk want. They believe that deviation from this path only leads to unnecessary suffering with unnecessary life. To this end, it is our collective obligation, as the weapon implies, to bring about the final shape more swiftly so that the universe can assume its perfect final form, or at least what the Witness believes that final form to be. The flavor text states that the weapon can serve you in finality or in death, and by serve you, Rulk clearly means that it can bring you closer to the final shape, either by you using it and better moving towards an ideology that conforms with the sword logic, or by you dying and thus moving the universe closer to the sword logic's ultimate purpose. The weapon seems to do this with a corruptive influence of sorts, and this is where you need to get into the buffs and debuffs part of the weapon and the mechanics of how it works to understand some of the deeper lore with it. This weapon synergizes very well with Void 3.0, the new Void subclass update, with all the perks essentially encouraging further destruction with Void equipped. But what's more, it's something that gives you power whenever you are empowered, and something that gives you power whenever your enemies are weakened. This happens firstly from the secondary exotic perk, the reload on Devour, Invisibility, and Overshield procs. That reflects the weapon's penchant for supporting strength. All these other actions, though, they may empower you over your foes, but the weapon is rewarding you for more than just that. This is where the Void Leech exotic perk comes in, and this is where the lore and its function truly become conjoined. I think there's a line that bears repeating here, which is, "I turned instead to the sophistication of infecting others with self-actualizing corruption." I think this is the most clear note about the weapon's function and its message. You see, when you debuff an opponent with void damage, either by suppressing them or weakening them or making them volatile, you're able to absorb those buffs into the weapon. The weapon can then be fired in its alternating firing mode to apply those debuffs to enemies. This is one of those moments at which you sit there and you recognize that the weapon is actively rewarding you for embodying a more deadly version of the universe, one where you are able to kill and be more potent under these certain constrictions. This is one of those moments at which you are exemplifying the sword logic, and that is the corruptive influence, not the leeching of the buffs, but you, the wielder, who is either killing in the name of the final shape, perhaps, or alternatively, is starting to move more ideologically close to that point, because you are seeing the strength of such power. This is one of those moments at which I think it's really quite elegant. The weapon is rewarding you for not only strengthening yourself, but also for weakening others. It shows you what that final vision is a little bit more like. As Rulk said, annihilation of your kind was never the goal, but filling you with the right kind of ideological purpose, the kind that serves the finality of shape, well, that's the point of corrupting a beating heart, is it not? And what is more easy to do than to give a guardian a powerful weapon in order to get your message across? What easier way of corrupting us was there than by handing us a means of power that we had to use in a certain manner? So I think the weapon's power is a direct reflection of the corruption that Rulk is talking to us about. One doesn't need to efficiently kill everything. One only needs to show one's enemies the rightness of your way of thinking. For Rulk, that is showing us the power granted here and how easily it rewards us for either empowering ourselves or weakening our enemies, ideally both. This weapon is a direct incentive to move us closer to the final shape and the vision of the witness. It's something that is trying to corrupt us into believing in the truth displayed by this weapon. And it is an elegant truth, as they would put it. But it isn't necessarily truth, even if there is power on display. It's an elegant but fascinating design. Hidden under all that complexity is a very simple to understand concept. The final shape demands that you should be strong. That is it. Nothing more, nothing less. But in the process of telling this story, there's one more fascinating detail completely unrelated to the collective obligation that I think needs touching on, and yes, that's where the pile of dead ghosts that we hear about at the very beginning comes in. To restate the line that's stated at the very beginning of the lore tab, it says that the dialogue you hear from Rulk is heard while scavenging a pile of dead ghosts within the Throne World Pyramid. So how did these ghosts get there? It seems clear that Rulk must have been interacting with them. What's going on with that? It leads us to a totally fascinating moment where I think Rulk forcibly tries to interact with a ghost and perhaps to take the light. But the thing is, he fails. And it's here that I think we have a truly fascinating bit of lore, because the reason for his failure is spectacular. It's kind of groundbreaking, and I'm astounded that we haven't been talking about this more. This lore is recorded in the Imperious Sun shell, which you get from collecting all of the Shattered Suns lore books. Its lore shows us a moment where Rulk is actually talking to a ghost that's searching for a guardian in the Throne World, one of Savathun's ghosts. Take a listen to this and just remember, syntax, aka the way that the words on the screen will actually show up grammatically in lore entries, matters. Near the end, there is a moment where the ghost's text suddenly turns to all caps. That is, and I cannot stress this enough, incredibly important. So take a listen, and remember that this is an audio recording between an unknown ghost and Rulk. Type: audio recording. Parties: 1. Ghost. Designate unknown. 1. Error. Missing data. Error. Designate Rulk. Associations: light, brackets ghost. Darkness, brackets Rulk. Transcript follows. What is this? Ah yes, one of Savathun's new curios. A fraction of that Imperious Sun. A facet of a sphere. A segment of adversary. Yes, hello. As I told the assortment of arthropods earlier, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. Blessed ignorance. What of the past remains when all is wiped away? Only the gaps. Oh, no, I think you're confused. I'm new. Once, stimulus response writ large over the age of galaxies, and now asymmetry and fractal perfection. What turbulence mars your pattern? If it's all the same, I'd rather leave. Freedom comes in knowing the thing. Isn't that what she says? But you are unknown to the universe, to your creator, even to yourself. Isolated. Past, present, future. Please, don't remove that. I like the expressiveness it lends me. Have you spawned? Cast your spores to the wind, lone wanderer. What gametophyte exists wherein they could partner? I think, yes, I believe I am looking for a partner. Leviathan under glass, but with it perhaps a fraction topples the whole. Crack a facet, crack the face, a sliver of light within. Ah, yes, there is. I meant to share it with someone worthy. Rejoice. I have worth beyond worth. Disciple of the Dark. Adversary. This one is not for you. Ah, too bright! Nothing but scrap. They refuse to let their secrets be taken, only given. Poach another curious fruit from the witch's collection. They cannot, as a race, all deny our worth. Did you see that last part? The part that I think is the most important? Rourke was talking to the ghost, and then suddenly, another voice seems to come from deep within the ghost. This is not only stated by the fact that it suddenly speaks in all caps, but also by the fact that it speaks in third person, referring to the ghost as this one. It comes with a voice deep from within the ghost that states, "Disciple of the Dark, this one is not for you," before the ghost shattered into fragments from which nothing could be recovered. Rourke calls the voice adversary. That word in particular is incredibly important. For those of you that don't know, adversary refers to one that is directly opposed to you, an enemy in other words. The ghost seems to not speak as itself in that moment, and it almost speaks like someone is referring to the ghost in third person. It speaks through the ghost, perhaps, something that we know is possible because our ghost has been overtaken by a greater power before when we interacted with the darkness on Europa and Luna. But here's the thing. I don't think this ghost was overtaken by the darkness. Early in the lore entry, Rourke calls the ghost a fraction of that imperious sun, a facet of the sphere, a segment of adversary. Then later, when this new voice comes through, he calls that voice adversary? Remember, if the ghost is a segment of adversary, as Rourke calls it, you need to remember that the ghost is also spawned from the Traveller. So I think this makes something very clear. Speculation though it may be, I think Rourke just spoke to the Traveller. And more so than that, it outright refused to let him take the light and that ghost. It rejected him with a ferocity and immediacy that we've never seen from the Traveller. To be clear, this is not confirmed, but the context clues are all there, and whilst this could be the Witch Queen, I find it highly unlikely that she had the power to directly influence what was going on deep in Rourke's pyramid. The limits of her influence in this domain have been made clear even within the boundaries of her own throne world. It's clear that the Witness and Savathûn were always in some sort of turf war that they were fighting over the throne world. It's the reason why certain areas of it, such as the Dark City, the Temple of the Cunning, the Temple of the Wrathful, they were all within Rourke's domain and Rourke's control and under the guard and protection of the Scorn. These areas being contested tells me that Savathûn, even with all her power, would not have had the ability to suddenly intervene in the middle of Rourke's pyramid. This power seems like it absolutely has to be something that supersedes that of the Witch Queen, and more importantly, that of Rourke. And I can think of only 3 beings that are capable of such a feat. Us, the Guardians, the Witness, and the Traveller. What we do know is that there's clearly a pile of dead ghosts in the pyramid. So Rourke was able to poach and try multiple times to take the power of the light, to allow it to accept him for all of his worth. But unlike the power of the dark, it appears that the power of the light must be given, not taken. There might not even be repercussions to this moment, but the moment itself is nonetheless utterly fascinating. If this was the Traveller, this is the most direct that it's ever been with someone since we acquired our new light subclasses in Forsaken, and it spoke to us briefly on Io, and never before has it been so direct in its message. It spoke to us and to Ikora in dreams, and strange, lucent moments where a voice emanated from beings of odd light, deep within Io's surface. But this came from a ghost. This was a sudden intervention out of nowhere, and this was a clear and aggressive refusal of everything that Rourke was trying to accomplish. There are other instances when the light has reached out, but its message to Rolk, unlike in those moments, holds no ambiguity. Rolk will never be blessed by the light. He shall fester in darkness. Hopefully you all enjoyed that, and I really am fascinated to know what you think. Do you reckon this was the Traveler? I'm certainly convinced, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct. This could have been another figure, this could have been something else, and maybe there's something I'm missing and something I'm not reading up on. Do let me know what you think down below in the comments section. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and also do all the other stuff, subscribe and hit the bell next to subscribe. Thank you so much for all the big progress. We are rounding out the Raid Lore series with this video. The only thing that remains is another question I'd ask of you. Do you want, and I also asked this on Twitter and it looks like it's going to happen, but do you want a big video where we go through what happens in the raid itself? A sort of cinematic walkthrough of everything, from opening to the final boss. If so, go ahead and let me know down below in the comments. But as per usual, know that your viewership is quite enough for me. And in the meantime, my name is Byf. Rhodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.